Yeah, no, very cool. Okay, Justin, really welcome to this my channel.
Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks for having me here.
And we have been talking a lot before through your like messenger and through your what is called it's
Telegram and
Telegram, yeah,
yeah,
and your show there,
yeah,
and fun, really nice to have you like this for the first time
yeah,
between four eyes, or I don't
Y-
know, five eyes.
yeah. It's all,
I don't think I have my six yet.
it's
I'm getting there.
it's always good to talk face to face. We do a lot of via text and over the internet, which is helpful to collaborate and get a lot of people together. But there's something special about having that face to face interaction, and then
Yeah,
taking it a step further, even getting to be in person is just always good to have those connections.
yeah. And my aim for this show, as I said to you before, I want to give a little portrait about you, who you are, because there are so many people listen to you all over the world now, and you share so much knowledge. And that's also my aim with this channel now, that kind of give something back to people that I really admire and give me knowledge or whatever, support or whatever. And also because it's super interesting to listen to you. So it's
Well,
going to be
thank you.
really
I'm
nice.
I'm honored to be here. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah. By the way, what do you know about Sweden? Do you have
Uh,
any connection?
and no, not a ton. I mean, I'm aware I'm aware of it, but I've never been. I've never been to that particular region of Europe. So no, I don't have a ton of information on it.
Yeah, okay. Cool. I'm guess that we're gonna go. Some things we're gonna discuss today will be about Sweden, I guess. So it's gonna be really cool. Um, your history, Justin. When I listen to you, I get the impression that you are this really focused guy and drink a lot of coconut oil and stuff like this. But how did you end up being this guy in? Well, as I see it, in real harmony, and that's what I'm aim, and I'm not even half there. But so I'm really curious about how you end up where you are at the moment, and now you're in Mexico, right?
Yeah, I'm in
Yeah.
Mexico. Just got here a few weeks ago, which is it's absolutely incredible. It's such a beautiful space, and this is truly, we are supposed to be in this golden zone where things can grow all year round, like, and you just feel it. You feel that resonance. You feel the warmth. So I'm loving it. I'm loving it here so far. But yeah, so to answer your question of how I got here, I mean, I'd say that I've always had an inquisitive mind. I've always had this thirst for something. This kind of like desire to learn and to better myself and to yeah. I always joke that the as far as sort of uncovering the truth behind society or where we sit right now. The first conspiracy I unraveled was Santa Claus and debunking
Mm,
that myth. I was
mm,
like 3 or 4 years old, and I would not stop asking my parents questions about how this Santa Claus thing worked. How does he get through the chimneys when people don't have chimneys, and all this sort of things. And they eventually got so tired of me asking about it that they're like, okay, we're not going to lie to you anymore. We're not going to make up this stuff. So I always joke about that, but it's continued from there, where I've just always kind of poked at things. That I've never settled for things are just the way they are, just because this is just how it's supposed to be. So always wanted to try and figure out like how things fit together, and then paired with that, I've always had just a love for people, a love for my brothers and sisters. So I truly do have this way of just seeing people at their highest potential. When I look at someone, when I interact with someone, I don't pay attention as much to the stories that they've created and the traumas that have gotten them to that point. I see their highest good. I see their highest self, and so that helps me bridge the gap between where they are currently and where they are going to. The trajectory, where the possibility, and it really does help me love each and every individual that I come in contact with very deeply, because I see that highest potential in it. And I just want to, like, my passion is to help people reach that. And, as we kind of develop and go further along, the only way that we can reach our highest potential is with the truth as our foundation. That has to be paramount. That has to be absolutely fundamental. So it's this marrying of these two passions of the truth and getting people to their highest potential that really has led me to this space where I just get to be myself and explore my passions and talk about them on a regular basis, and sort of help people uncover that. So that's kind of an overview from a more higher level perspective, but just to kind of get into the details of my history. I grew up in um, a fairly a fairly wealthy family. Not buku money, but I went to
Is this the Texas we're talking about now, or where do you come from?
so I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. So I grew
Ah,
up in
okay.
Memphis, Tennessee, and yeah, grew up there and went to um, went through the pretty traditional route. Like have a very loving family, very loving parents, siblings, 3 sisters, and so big family, and very supportive, very great family. And they were sort of the more traditional Christian kind of upbringing. We'd go to church and yeah, I went all throughout school, and it was great. It was a pretty, there wasn't really any, a lot of people will have these histories that led them through traumatic events and things of that nature. And honestly, I don't have a lot of trauma in my past. I don't have a lot of hard things. And for a while that was actually like a point of contention with myself, of like when I would speak to people and they would have all of these other aspects to compare themselves to, of how they built themselves and got to that point. And I didn't really have a lot to draw on. So sometimes people would look at that with disdain and thinking, "Oh, well, how could you ever understand what I've gone through if
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
you've had this peachy life, you've had this
Mm.
easy, it's been very easy for you." And so I used to beat myself up about that a lot, but now I've stepped into it and realized that I was provided this gift. I was provided this opportunity of having this beautiful life and getting to this point so that I could show people what's possible. So I could show people like this is what it could look like. This is the, and it only gets better, but this is the sort of way that we all need to be raised. This is the way that we all need to be brought up, so that we have this loving and supporting background, so that we can reach our highest potential even faster. And just kind of expanding on that.
Do
Yeah,
you think that all children have this possibility to be this
absolutely.
light? Yeah, because
Absolutely.
for me it was kind of, I was like this when I was a child, but then I kind of lost it for, I don't know, 25 years or something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I absolutely do think everyone has this potential. We come into this realm not as, not one way or another. We come in fairly neutral, and so we are very much affected by our immediate surroundings as soon as we come in, but free will always exists. And a lot of times these things that we experience are on a higher level, to help drive us to that point of the eucatastrophe, which is that realization that, like, oh, I'm here to do this. I'm here to go on this journey, which is the hero's journey, which is to recognize that I'm here to uh, reconnect with God, essentially. To go through this. We come into this realm to experience duality, to experience the physicality, but the whole point of it is to remember that we are children of God, and that to step back into it and say, hey, like, I can walk this path on a much higher level. I can recognize what I'm here to do. Um, and as soon as we step back into that, it becomes a lot more fun, and it becomes a lot easier, because that's the whole point of what we're supposed to do, is to remember this and to go back to it. So yeah, absolutely. I think everyone has that potential.
Yeah. And after Memphis, then you moved to Texas, right? Or
No,
was it that later?
no. So Texas was just recently. I was only there for a few months. I mean, I have lived in Texas, so I guess just to do a physical timeline. So I grew up in Memphis until I was 18, and then went to college in Knoxville. Um, that's on the other side of Tennessee. So I was in Tennessee until I was about 22. Graduated college with an engineering degree. I was very much in that world, and I still very much do appreciate the sort of logical perspective. I love problem solving, so I really
Mm.
love tapping into that that aspect of helping people in that regard as well. So I graduated college, and then I moved to San Antonio, Texas. So I was there for 3 years, working in the oil industry, if you can believe it. And so did that for a few years, and had good experiences there. And then I moved up to Seattle, and was there for 4 years. And at that point, I worked for big tech. I was working for Amazon corporate, and which is another chapter. So if you can see me in a corporate setting and doing
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff, which was an interesting experience. But
that's also really interesting because you know about the name Amazon. You know that
mhm.
it's a Swedish name
Oh, is
from
it?
a Swedish car from beginning.
Oh, cool. I
So
didn't know
so
that.
yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so did that, and and this was all part of this kind of like thinking this was the structure of life. Like you go through college, you go into the corporate world, and you get a job, and you make money that way, and you save up for retirement. I thought this is what we were supposed to do, and so I was just doing it. Um, and I got married out in Seattle as well. It was a short marriage, and it's funny talking about it because it was honestly that I couldn't have picked a better person to have gotten married to very quickly and realized that we got married way too quickly, and to step back out of it. She's a truly wonderful person. And so we just kind of realized that, hey, we jumped into this way too quickly. No kids together or anything like that. So did that whole experience. So as far as like checking off boxes, I'm just checking off
Yeah.
all the normal things of getting married, getting divorced, and so stepped out of that. And
But not even that was a trauma. That was kind of okay, or
yeah,
the
I mean,
marriage,
that
because
like
I'm
I
divorced myself, and I have actually a better relationship with my ex-wife today than I
right.
when I had.
Yeah, I mean, even using the word divorce, I'm hesitant because so many people have so much trauma attached to it.
Yeah, it's true.
But it doesn't have to be that way. And we can experience relationships with people and learn so much because I know exactly why I met her, and I know what she was here to teach me, and I know what I was there to teach her. And so we met for this perfect reason. But it wasn't for a lifetime. It wasn't to be together forever. It was to come together and share that experience and then separate. But it doesn't mean there has to be any sort of negative feelings or anything in that regard. So
I never
it's
thought about it. It's interesting actually because if you say yeah I'm divorced, oh I'm sorry, it's like the natural
right.
reply
Yeah.
to, but it shouldn't be like that.
No, and I think it's healthy to recognize that each and every individual, no matter how brief they step into our lives, they're playing a role to show us something. So even a 5-minute conversation is here to demonstrate something to me. It's here to help me see something, but it expands further into, longer relationships. But when we can recognize that each and every thing and event and person that comes into our life is happening for me, not to me, it really helps us to step out of that victim consciousness and step into that ownership role of like, I recognize that God, the one infinite consciousness creator, is always with me, is always guiding me, and that creator always wants to lead me to the place of highest potential. And so everything that's being led to me, even if it seems painful in that particular moment, is still leading me to my highest potential. And really reframing that conversation internally, it's so beautiful because it really helps us step outside of that, again, that victim consciousness that we everything's happening to me, and that I'm, oh, woe is me, life just sucks or whatever else, and I can't do anything about it. But you take ownership and you take responsibility.
That's actually one of the things that I learned from you that I actually think about every day. That everything happens for a reason.
Mm,
You talk about this a lot, and that's
absolutely.
really interesting because you see all problems. You see everything with a different view if you look at it from
Truly.
this perspective. It's really interesting.
Yeah, when and that's, we spoke briefly before recording, but that kind of taps into the biggest lie, to keep us away from this responsibility aspect, and to keep us as victims, because that's what makes the best slaves. If we think that we're not responsible and we don't have authority over our own lives and everything's just happening to me, then we're always going to be in that state of mind. And that's arguably the biggest lie, because it disconnects us from God, disconnects us from this infinite consciousness that's always there, present with us, and it's a part of us. It's always trying to guide us to that place of maximum potential. And so, of course, everything's happening for us because there's nothing else that this one infinite consciousness wants to do other than expand and grow. So, of course, it's going to lead us to the place of maximum potential. It only wants to. We only want to get there, but we just kind of have to trust it.
Do you experience with friends and stuff that, ironically, that the more in harmony you are as a person, the more, the more irritated the people around you can.
Yeah, well, and that's the
It's
thing.
really interesting psychological thing, this, because the better I feel, the worse. I almost feel sorry for them.
It's fascinating to watch. It's almost like a sociology experiment to to be a part in. But there's that you start to uncover um, where our relationships were built in ego or where they were built within our true self. And so those relationships that are built in ego, when we start to step outside of our ego and we start to experience life and the beauty of it, those who are still operating within that ego perspective and have built that relationship from that egoic perspective are threatened by this new way of being because it's causing them to look at themselves. It's causing that mirror to turn around and all of a sudden they have to examine how they operate and what's driving them on a regular basis. And so that pisses a lot of people off, unconsciously. It's something that's hard to deal with. It's hard to confront. And so yeah, I see that all the time, and it's responded to in different ways. And it's something where I always have compassion with, because I know that it's a painful experience, and I know that it's not something easy for anyone to go through. But at the same time, I know that I'm providing an opportunity for them to step outside of that perspective, because if we don't provide that mirror for others to look at and step outside of this loop that they're in, because that's all the ego does, just keep us in this loop, this constant loop of just self-pity and whatever else. And so while they might get upset with me for giving them an opportunity to step outside of the ego, it's ultimately gonna help lead them down that road. Might not be in that particular day or week or month or year, but that's planting a seed to say, oh, well, there's a different way. There's some other way that we can do this. But yes, it is fascinating to watch and see how people do react to that kind of thing.
Sometimes when just for example, if there is a friend that you know that person for, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, and suddenly they get really aggressive about something, could it also be that it had something to do with some form of almost like mind control from media and everything that we get? Because I really don't recognize this person in this particular thing, like, how can they be so aggressive about my opinion?
Right. Yeah.
When this person is so lovely and so nice and helpful in all other senses, or it's
Yeah,
really interesting.
it is. It's the way that, because ultimately what steers, how we come into this way of being is just an external projection of our ego. And so that's all that, like the cabal, the deep state, like this secret society that rules the world, that's all they are, is a manifestation of this external projection of our left brain, of our ego. And the only way that they can maintain that level of control and subversion is if they've convinced and programmed others to keep it that way. And so it's this subtlety of and it does happen through the media and just the power of persuasion. It's psychological engineering to make sure that at anytime anyone starts to step outside of that and see the truth, all of a sudden that programming switches on, and it just has to beat it back down, and it happens in many different ways. But it is fascinating to watch. I always love the meme that people have posted where it talks about the Agent Smith effect, from the Matrix. And it's like you're sitting in a coffee shop and you're talking about 9/11 and that hoax, with a friend, and all of a sudden somebody sitting in the table next to you turns around, and you can almost see them transform into Agent Smith, and they start
Mm-hmm.
telling you, hey, don't talk about that kind of stuff, that's ridiculous. And so that the whole system, the matrix, it manages itself through this programming, and that's the only way that they can actually do it, because they don't have enough people, manpower, to do it on a regular basis. They can't hire enough people or pay enough people to do that. But if they can sow that seed deep enough to where are so conditioned and programmed, then it works really well. But that plays out, yeah, in so many different ways. When we start to express our opinions that are outside of the norm, people actually feel threatened because they're so tied to their ego, and their ego is threatened because that the ego, the whole world is threatened when the truth starts to come out, because the ego is built on lies. The, our we're the truth is what's real, and so that's where we have to get back to.
Did you have anything in your life that like we talk about, like how big is a lie? What is the biggest deception that you came across that was like, wow, like.
Well, I mean, I think I always say that the deception that ties them all together is that we are disconnected from God. Um, that's the absolute biggest one. That's what, if you can take every conspiracy, every lie that's put out there, you can find that as the root. If they can sever that cord between us and the one infinite consciousness, between us and Creator, that's the biggest lie. But we never have been disconnected. But and that simply is just going from singularity to duality. That duality is a fiction. It's not real, but it's a part of this experience in order to provide us a learning mechanism to learn from and grow from. But then, aside from that, if we're getting a little bit more physical in the lies themselves, just the shape of this plane that we're standing on, this whole like idea that we're on a wobbling, spinning ball floating in space at impossible speeds, always moving and going all over the place, and somehow the star formations never really change. But don't worry about that, and this thing, gravity, exists that keeps us on here, but it doesn't bend water or anything like that. So they that would probably be the biggest lie that they push on just a regular basis. Because
Can you
the more
tell me a little bit, just before we continue there? When you find out about this, how did you react? What was it that makes you go like, wow?
yeah, it was there was a tough one like that. My ego really struggled with this truth, because it's, we're conditioned so effectively from such a young age. There's not a classroom out there that doesn't have this spinning ball, the globe structure in it, and it's just pushed everywhere. There's so much imagery. So yeah, I struggled with it for a while, and honestly, it wasn't, I would say, even just a year ago, I was
Oh,
still, yeah, still very much believing the glow lie, and so this has been a process. It's hard to imagine. Like, this year has been absolutely wild. How much has gone on. Um, but yeah, it took me a second to wrestle with it. I've always been into conspiracies and uncovering the truth, but I always thought that that particular one was just a I thought that that was like a one to put out there to make people look crazy if they believe in it. I thought that that was like a Freemason project to make people look loony if they believe in flat Earth, or believe in, and even flat Earth is such a weaponized term, because it's not really flat. It's level. It's not flat, because obviously there are mountains and the way that it's contained with the ice wall and things of that nature. But so they use this triggering term to get people to be automatically turned off by the idea. And I was at first. It took me a while to come to terms with it. But listening to, like, Charlie Freak was one who kind of turned me on to the idea, and then it was really Eric Dubay and his work that, because I needed that logical perspective. I needed to have some proofs to what, and it really just took me having an open mind and seriously looking at it for the first time, not just automatically writing it off and having this cognitive dissonance that, oh, there's no way that could possibly be true, but spending just a little bit and saying, okay, well, let's see what they're talking about. Let's just entertain the idea. And as soon as you do, and that's what I tell people, as soon as you make that switch and you seriously consider it, it doesn't take long. It really doesn't, because there's so many ways that you can prove that we're on a level plane, but there's no way that you can prove definitively that we're on a wet spinning ball floating in space. Like, there's no way that you can do that. But our eyes don't, that, and that's just part of that deception too. They want to make it to where we don't even trust our own eyes and our own senses, our own experience. We have
But
to,
you get it quite fast when you
yes,
suddenly, okay.
yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. Yeah, it was quick. It was quick. Yeah, once I started seeing the reasonings and the fact that the horizon, never falls, and that Polaris, the pole star, that's a huge one. The fact that, like, how can people believe if we're floating in space all the time and spinning and wobbling all over the place, that this one star just happens to never move ever for thousands of years, throughout recorded human history, they've had this one star that's stuck right there. And you telling me that we're somehow spinning and floating in space and moving at impossible speeds? No, I don't think so.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really what do you call it? It's stigmatized, because I remember first time a friend told me if the Earth was, he said, like, if it's round or flat or whatever it is, he said, and it took me 6 months before I actually researched it.
Hmm.
This is how deep it is with the
Yeah,
indoctrination.
you're right. Yeah, it's
It's
very deep.
really, and I call myself kind of open-minded, but still it took half a year before I.
Yeah, I mean, it did, I guess it was pretty quick once I seriously considered it, but there was you know, like, years where I was aware of the flat Earth, like, idea, but I just always rolled it off. I always ridiculed it and thought it was ridiculous. But yeah, that's how
when you
powerful.
found when you found out, did something happen with you on a spiritual level? Because what I found out personally is that, I don't know, it's really interesting, because I never been so happy, and I don't know what happened in my life rationally, but I just enjoy life so much more.
Mm.
It's
Yeah, I mean, it was paired with so many things going on at the same time, but it was all leading towards that reconnection with God on such a higher and more beautiful level. And I think that's why that lie is pushed so much, because the only way that we can truly connect with God is if we have this foundation that's firm and still and stationary and silent. We have to be still and stationary and silent in order to connect with God. And so having this, going from this reality where everything is chaotic and moving and never stopping, to all of a sudden we're here and it's still, and it's just that peace, I think, does, for everyone, and myself included, create that space to where we can step into this reconnection with God. And like I said, there were a lot of things happening at the same time that were leading me back to that space, but I would say that's a huge one, to just have that peace of, like, yeah, God never left us. We decided to leave God, and so we're always there. We're always supported, and He's always waiting for us. He's always got His hand. We just have to reach out and grab it. And as soon as you step back into that space, then everything just becomes a lot easier. You take the load off. You stop worrying about things, and um, yeah. So short answer, yes. Got
so
a lot
so how
better.
do you see the world? Do you see, for example, about the South Pole and the North Pole? What is your view of it? Is it like areas on the other side of the world? What is your personal view of it?
Yeah, it's hard to say because there's so much, obviously it's all been built around deception, but I would say the North Pole, or the center pole, is where life emanates from. That's the center of the toroidal field. And when you learn about magnetism, that's the way that this level plane is set up and exists. It's this, um, it has to be emanating outwards from a central point. And so the center pole is where life comes from. I think that's where we started this duality experience, is at that point, and then we kind of expanded from there. Um, and then the South Pole doesn't exist. It's just the opposite of the center pole. So anything leading away from the center pole is leading south. but it's just leading outward away from the central point. And so when you get to things like Antarctica, it's not a continent that's, contained. It's an ice wall that surrounds this entire plane, and it keeps, you know, we have so much water, so it has to be contained. And what exists outside of that ice wall is hard to say, because there's so much there has been so much deception around what exists here. Um, but there are a lot of fun theories and speculations and things to play with of that this is just an infinite plane. It just expands out as far as you can possibly imagine. It just keeps going and going, providing us with more unique experiences to play and grow from. But the way that I see it is we've got to kind of address what's here first. We've got to beat this level of the game before we can start to expand outward.
Besides the spiritual uh, view of this, could it also be a more rational reason that it also has to do with not electricity, but energy source, and how they can make us pay for electricity? And could it be
Absolutely, yeah.
just to be in power, basically?
Yeah, well, it's all about subversion and control, and that's the whole idea. If you can feed people a bunch of lies, and then you hold the keys to the truth, and you always have that leg up. That's the only way that slavery actually exists, is when lies exist. And so of course that's part of it too. And that's why they never teach about magnetism in any schools. You can't take any courses on hardly any courses. You definitely can't get a degree in magnetism, because that's the fundamental basis of our reality. That's like how this all works and how we're constructed. And electricity is just this byproduct. And so if they can say that electricity is all there is, they hold the keys to the magnetic uh, infrastructure, and then they sell us this electric byproduct. Then it always creates this sort of like leash to hold on to the rest of society, to keep them from expanding too much and growing too much, because you can always taper it off. You can always siphon off the hose and keep them from expanding. So yeah, it's very paramount, but that's where we're moving towards.
Do you think in our lifetime that will be having a society where we actually don't pay for electricity and stuff like this?
Absolutely. I don't think we have much longer to go. I mean, I would say it's hard to say, because it really all depends on how quickly we step back into the truth. It's all, free will is absolute. We have free will at all times, and we can steer this reality with our collective consciousness and what we decide to choose. But the trajectory and where it looks like we're headed is, yeah, for all of that to be exposed, and for us to be given an opportunity to build society based on the truth instead of build on lies. And with that, inevitably, it has to be built on this technology where free energy is truly free, and everyone has access to it, and has the opportunity. You imagine having, everyone having like a, and they've built these, like they have this technology already, and you can find out about it. But imagine having everyone having a generator that you can hold in your hands, that could power literally everything that you ever wanted to do, and it never runs out. And so it's just giving people that opportunity to tap into their creative essence without the limit of power is so beautiful to imagine. Because as soon as we start to step, because that's all we are, we're just these beautiful creative beings that are just wanting to unlock and be creative. And when you take away the power limitation, we're truly limitless, and it will just keep growing, and we'll just keep expanding in that way.
I've been watching a lot of videos from this guy, what is called John Levy, I think, with the Tartarian society and the history and all the hoaxes about.
Right.
Do you think that we actually all these things that we're talking about now with magnetism and free energy? Do you think that we actually had this a couple of 100 years ago?
No doubt. I mean, so everything, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything that exists here has kind of gone in cycles. We've gone in this cyclical nature of And the way that I like to visualize it is it's like a pendulum. It's God's pendulum.
Mm.
So we're going from singularity back to duality, and then back to singularity. We're just swinging back and forth. So when we're at singularity, we're all harmonized, we're completely one, and that's the sort of time of reunification. That's where we assess the experience of duality, and we kind of learn and grow from it, and we can experience that for as long as we want. But then we decide to go back to duality and experience what that's like again. So we fall, and we swing back towards that dualistic state. And so you've got all that spectrum in between of society and how it progresses. And so right now we're at the upswing of the duality side of it. We're at the farthest separation from the singularity, but the momentum has just stopped, and we're starting that swing backwards. So every step along the way of swinging back to singularity is going to be moving back toward this harmonization, which means that society is going to be harmonizing a lot more, and we're going to be unifying, and that is going to be paired with this technology being utilized and things of that nature. But so that pendulum swing has, to answer your question, has happened many 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 times, infinite
Okay.
times.
Mm.
We can't possibly imagine. I mean, we can try, but it's we've always been here. Consciousness has always existed. So of course there have been societies where this technology has been um, utilized, because it's just a natural progression of going towards that harmonization and truly tapping into the power of this universe that we're a part of. So absolutely. I mean, and you see remnants of all of these ancient structures that they can't even possibly
Mm.
begin to try and recreate today. Like in Japan, I believe they tried to recreate the Great Pyramid at 1/5 size
Yeah.
scale,
Mm.
and they failed horribly. They couldn't do it. And so we think all of our modern technology and how advanced we are, but really we know nothing. And so yes, that technology absolutely existed, and we'll get it back again, and it's just part of that natural progression.
Speaking about magnetism, um, uh, when I was a child, I had this train with a magnet, two magnets. So and when you switch it, you can't put them together, the trains. Uh, do you think that there is some kind of technique that they use like this? Because if our world is like a magnetic field, is it possible that this is how they did it with, like huge stones and stuff like this, that they actually reversed the energy, sort of like when with what you can do with two magnets, but in a bigger scale?
Yeah, no,
Because then everything makes logic.
right. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And the way that I've seen it conceptualized is it's marrying the idea of magnetism with this with the fact that we're all frequency and vibration. So if you can reverse the poles in that sort of way and tap into the resonant frequency of a particular object, then all of a sudden that object loses its um, loses its weight, and it becomes a lot more plastic. So you've seen some of those structures where it looks like someone literally dug their finger into it, because they did. If you can tap into the frequency of that, it becomes so malleable, and you can just move it like it's nothing. But this is absolutely using the magnetic makeup of that particular object and that particular uh, material, and that's what we'll get to utilize and step back into.
So let's say in 5 years, that people, generally speaking, start to know that there is something wrong with the whole idea of this spinning ball, and that we have free energy. What is the next step for mankind after that, you think, to discover?
Well, I mean, it's all a journey, and then we get to take it wherever we want. But I think really just taking away limitations on what we so there's less work and more time to create. And the more that we have more time to create, the more that we get to expand and truly step into what we're here to do, which is to play with this physical experience fully, without the sort of overhang of what we've been conditioned with for so long. So I don't know of any particular step that will necessarily do, but it'll be full of exploration and creativity, you know, beautiful, you know, our artistic our artistic abilities will just explode. You know, imagine everyone having all the time in the world to do exactly what they want without any worry about whatever. You know, the potential is absolutely beautiful. So it'll just be this, yeah, we'll just get to step further and further into this collective experience where everyone gets to operate and recognize that they came into this world with a unique set of traits, and um, we get to celebrate those, and not try and make everyone the same, but celebrate the fact that we do have these differences, and this gives this vibrancy, this color to this whole experience that we're playing in, so that we can all, yeah, compare notes and say, wow, you do that, that's amazing, and then, you know, I can do this, and then we just get to play with that.
Do you think what's your view about reincarnation, for example, that we actually can live more than once, or
Yeah, I
at
mean,
least?
it's 100% the reality. That's I know that with that the every fiber of my being that this our consciousness never, there's no such thing as death. Like death of this physical body has nothing to do with the death of consciousness. Consciousness cannot die. So reincarnation is just the natural, and it's funny because it used to be, you know, it used to be taught in organized Christianity. It used to be a regular thing that was taught within that. But there, I don't remember what Roman emperor decided that was a bad idea, because it's much easier to get people to be fearful if they believe that they just have this one life, this one kick of the can,
Yeah,
and then they're
like a
screwed.
one shot
Yeah,
on
but
everything.
yeah, but it's absolutely a real thing, and it's something that we should all learn about, because it's a useful tool to help us learn, because it provides us with like a reset. You know, if we've gotten strayed too far away from the path of learning and stepping into what we're here to do, then death is a natural, it's a natural part of that cycle, to give us an opportunity to kind of like recalibrate and start over, not fully, we retain a lot of the things that we learn, but to recalibrate and to yeah, start doing that progression again. But eventually, you know, if you truly walk this path, which is the same path that all of these enlightened warriors like Jesus and Buddha and Krishna, all of them were teaching the same way. If we step into this fully, then we don't have to experience death. We don't have to experience the reincarnation cycle, the samsara, the wheel of karma, because we can step fully into this regenerative cycle of, you don't have to die, and you get to just operate and walk this earthly plane, experience the physical reality around us with the true understanding that we're always connected with God, and you get to marry the two, you know, the mother and the father, the mother below and the father above. And that's the truly exciting part, because that's kind of like almost beating the game, or getting, you know, like if you're familiar, if people are familiar with video game terminology, but it's like
Yeah,
in-game content. You know, it's like
yeah.
you've beaten the game, and you're here as the bodhisattva. You're here to walk this earthly plane, and then you get to do whatever you want and experience the game at a whole another level. So that's what we're really here to do, is to break free of that reincarnation cycle, and then we get to live as long as we want, and then when you're tired of it, then you're like, okay, well, it's time to move on, and then experience whatever else is out there, which is hard to imagine, but
That word
then
level is really interesting if you talk video games and stuff like this. I mean, that you actually go to the next level. Do you think that it's the same for our existence? Almost like a video game that
yeah,
you like,
100%.
when you have done your homework here, so to speak, you go to the next.
100%. Yeah, 100%. It is this beautiful game that we created to play a part in, because we wanted to experience and know ourselves. And so this particular level, you know, this realm of consciousness that we're playing in, is so beneficial, and it provides so much for us to learn and grow and experience. Because how else could you experience all of this without actually like living it? It wouldn't be nearly as exciting. So this provides us a unique opportunity to like truly step into it, and we, you know, each time we play this game, and this goes back to that pendulum swing. Each time we play it is a new time that we're playing this game, and each time we do, we say, okay, what can we do to make it even harder? What can we do to
Mm.
make it more challenging? Because after you beat a game so many times, you're like, okay, well, that's boring now. I don't want it to be that easy. So what can I do to make it more challenging? And we were like, you know what? Let's forget everything every time we die. Let's make it that hard where we just forget everything and we have to rediscover it and remember it. And that's hard. That's very difficult. You know, everything about this is very difficult, but we implemented those difficulties, those challenges, because it makes the reward that much more rewarding when we do
Mm.
beat the game and come out of it. We're like, holy shit, I did that. You know, that was awesome. That was a lot of fun.
So do you think that our physical world that we live in now is basically like a simulator, like a flight simulator or
I- Yeah,
boot camp or training camp or whatever
it is. It is
for
to
the
an
next
extent.
level?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm hesitant to use that word because a lot of people think, you know, it's like we're forced into the simulation and we have to play it. But it's really it is a simulation that we chose that we helped create and we chose to participate in because none of this is real. Like there's no such thing as this physical table that my computer's sitting on it. Like none of that really exists. It's all just part of this experience that we get to play with, and the whole point of it is just for us to like know thyself, for us to know ourselves more. And so we split ourselves into infinite number of forms so that we could see ourselves and play with ourselves and experience that in an infinite number of ways. And that's why free will is so paramount, because it creates this ability for there to never ever be a repeat. It never gets old, and it never gets boring. There's never any time where everything has been experienced, because there are infinite possibilities. And so we just get to keep playing as, yeah, forever and ever, which is awesome.
So now we discuss this topic about, you know, our world and stuff like this. And if we go to a more rational or physical, this physical world, about another topic that I'm really interested in, that you talked a lot about, and that's the Q phenomenon. What is Q for people that think that we are completely,
Yes.
completely.
Yeah. Well, and the media's done a great job at ridiculing and demonizing that term, which is, you know,
I
just
didn't want to say the word because I don't like it, but yeah, what they call us.
yeah. It's fascinating, and it's like, why would they spend so much time on ridiculing it if it was just a conspiracy theory? You know, like they don't spend much time on like uh, you know, aliens or Bigfoot or anything like that. They leave those alone. But Q is somehow is this horrible thing that they have to attack all the time, and it makes you wonder. Um, but for those who aren't aware, Q is a information dissemination campaign that's most likely led by high-ranking military officers who recognize that who are playing a role and recognize that our this world was under duress, under attack from a small group of people that wanted to continue to enslave and even commit genocide against a large portion of the population, and that time was running short, so they had to act and had to somehow get the information to the public. But given that all media corporations were controlled by these same few individuals, they had to come up with a creative way to get this information out there. So Q emerged as this anonymous posting on originally 4chan and then 8chan and then 8kun, that was just dropping hints, dropping little hints and clues here and there that people had to decode and figure out what was going on. But a lot of them were based on real events, and a lot of them have come true and are still coming true. And so there's a lot to this, and the more that we step into this, we kind of uncovered that this was part of this grand plan that's been playing out for a long time. And it just goes to show how, there certainly is evil in this world, and there certainly is that darkness that exudes. But to counterbalance that, there's always that opposite side. There's always, God has always been there, and there's always that light side as well. And so this is a group of people who have recognized that there is an issue, and we do have to step forward and address it. And so right now we're seeing what should be, or at least a turning point in this story of going from this darkness dominated society to where we're going to be given the opportunity to step into the truth. And as soon as the truth is revealed, then we'll get to step into that. And that's what Q is doing, is to help lead us to the truth, so that we can empower ourselves and take responsibility, and not be given all of our power away to these psychopaths that all they want to do is enslave us, and much worse.
How long do you think they have planned this?
Oh,
When did it start, do you think?
it has certainly been going on since JFK, and since he was assassinated. That this plan has been in place, and that's, you could argue it's been going on since the dawn of time. There's always been this back and forth, between these two. It's this dualistic experience of light versus darkness. But darkness has dominated for majority of this era, and that's kind of been part of the design. But as far as like the Q plan, and more recently, it has been in place since JFK, no doubt. And what happened with JFK? I mean, I think they got a little bit too hasty with trying to roll this plan out, and they didn't have enough safety mechanisms in place to prevent that sort of disaster from happening. And so we see what they did to JFK, and he was confronting the very same group of people that we're still dealing with today and have always been dealing with. So it's been a very intricate plan that's gone on for that long. They've had to be really patient, and so yeah, 60, 70 years at least, which is wild, because that means there have been people who are so dedicated to this plan, have lived their whole lives, and still not been able to see this plan come to fruition. But that's how important it is to get everything right. That's why it has to be so detailed and intricate.
You said something that was really interesting. I think it was in the not Instagram, your Telegram chat, that you said that it's event-based, not time-based.
Yep.
Can you explain a little what you mean with that?
Yeah, so a lot of people who follow the Q plan and what's going on get tied to dates, and expect things to happen on certain dates, and a lot of dates have come and gone, and things haven't happened, and that discourages a lot of people. But what people need to remember is it's not about a timeline. It's about certain things have to happen in order for this plan to move forward, because the whole point of the plan is to bring the truth back to the public, to give everyone an opportunity to let go of the lie and see the truth. And unfortunately, we have been so far gone into this deception that if the truth is completely revealed too quickly, it's actually counterproductive, and it creates this disastrous effect where, like, you imagine if all of a sudden society is unraveled all at once, that creates a lot of violence, and it creates a lot of uproar, and could potentially even bring us back into a period of enslavement after the fact, that they could essentially gather the pieces and put us back in there. Um, so it has to be done very meticulously, and that's why I say it's event-based, because certain events have to play out in order to demonstrate that the public is ready to hear certain aspects of the truth. And so that's why, Q always references that we're seeing a movie play out, because the major players have already been addressed on the sort of cabal side of it. But what has to happen now is the public has to be sort of primed and warmed up to this idea of telling them that, and without them freaking out. So, I don't know, you can see it in many different ways, but just with the COVID stuff, for example, that the fact that so many people were so willing to wear masks and just abdicate their sovereignty and do whatever they were told is not a good sign that we were ready. So we had to go through a lot of essentially painful experience to experience the karmic debt of giving away our freedom in that sort of way, and get to the point where people are so pissed off and tired of it. And that's the sort of events, that have to play out in order for people to be ready. And then as soon as the truth comes out that that whole thing was a lie, they can channel that anger and say, okay, I'm never going to be lied to again, and really step into that instead of just freaking out and going chaotic and um, yeah, tumultuous in that perspective. So yeah, it has to be event based, and things do have to play out because there is free will, and that has to be honored. It's absolute.
This is so interesting. Do you think that the whole uh, COVID-19 scam, that not scam, but the way that with all these lockdowns during 2020, was this planned from the White Hats, the way it?
No, no. Well, it was hijacked and steered. So that plan initially was going to be the final. That's why it was called the coronavirus, because this was going to crown the cabal, the deep state, into their new leadership position, because they've always ruled behind the scenes, but they've always wanted to rule openly. And this was going to be their crowning, to where they were going to drive us into this state of fear, always have this and in this perpetual state of lockdown, always be giving us new vaccines with new technologies to keep us, further microchipped and controlled. Um, so that was very much a cabal plan, but the White Hats hijacked that plan, recognized that it was going to roll out, and they've numbed it enough. They've nulled out the really devastating effects of it, but they're utilizing it as sort of like a double-edged sword to expose the deep state. So let them, because you can't really arrest people if they haven't committed a crime. So this is just another example of where they've allowed these psychopaths to commit these crimes, and then they're able to expose it and use this as leverage, because you couldn't just come out and say, oh yeah, actually, by the way, our world was controlled by this small group of psychopaths and they wanted to kill most of you. You couldn't just say that. You can't, like you always said, you can't just tell the people. You have to show them. So this event was allowed to play out in a more numbed down state, so that it could be used to show the public, this is how far these psychopaths were willing to go. This is how devastating how far they were willing to take it. Um, so again, to provide that fuel, that resolve behind people, so that we never ever allow this shit to happen again. Like we have to be very firm on that. So it has to be done very carefully, and that's a big part of it.
What do you think is going to happen now? If we're talking the states now, for example, with the Dominion machines and the voting, what do you see? What do you see in the nearest future? How it's going to?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen reports that as early as Wednesday of this week, they're going to be done with the election audit in Arizona, which is the first state to perform a complete audit of the election. And uh, as soon as one state starts to go, it's just going to be a domino effect of um, showing that our entire election process was rigged and has been rigged for a very long time. Um, and that's going to be fascinating to watch. But it's going to lead back to the truth, which is that Trump won in a landslide, and we get to reclaim this sort of. We'll get to have fair elections for the first time ever, and we'll get to actually see where people's hearts are and what people want. And that's just going to be a beautiful transition point to eventually move away from government in general. This is the government to end all governments. It's going to give us an opportunity to step away from this idea that we have to be spoon fed by this top down approach to society, but we get to move back into this sovereign experience where I recognize that I'm a sovereign. I recognize that I'm a child of God. I can I can commune and work with other people in my local community, and then it moves up from there. So it's a bottom up approach instead of a top down approach. And so I don't know how long it's going to take for us to get through all of that, but it's going to be that natural progression of getting to that state.
Can people even comprehend that there never been any democratic elections? I mean,
Yeah,
that is truly gonna.
it's going to be very surprising, but yeah, it's going to be amazing to witness. It's going to be very shocking, and there's going to be a lot to it. Like, and that's kind of what we're here for. Those of us who have on a soul level consciously chosen to be the leaders in this movement and stepping into the truth on a earlier scale, we decided to sort of do the more difficult aspects ahead of time, so that we could be those beacons of light for when the truth does start to come out, because it's going to be a very dark experience for so many when they realize that their entire everything was a lie, because everything was, like, everything organized society pushed was a lie. And that's gonna be a tough pill to swallow, even for us who have been paying attention. It's still gonna be hard to swallow at times. But that's kind of our role in this, is to step forward and say, you know what, it's okay. Like, because we're moving to that beautiful space, we're moving to that place of highest potential. We're getting away from these limitations. And there might be a little bit of a bumpy road to get there, but it's gonna be worth it.
One of the hardest pill for me to swallow is that there is so many connections to Sweden. For example, the Dominion machines, who owns this, and like the whole telecom system, and everybody pays license, like Amazon, for example, or Google, or whatever, Twitter, to a Swedish family, which happens to have the first four letters as a Wall Street, which is also pretty interesting.
Wow.
A family called Wallenberg, which is ties, which they ship in the Suez Canal, and it's so much that ties back to Sweden. And Robert O'Brien talks about that it's about the Swedish legal system, and like that was a really big red pill for me, that because for being a typical Swede, we were brought up with again, like, completely false narrative that Sweden is a little country and have no power or whatever, and it seems like we have our fingers in every jar there is, all over the world, with everything.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Really interesting.
You've shared quite a bit with me, and it's not a topic I've dove into too much, but I think it's when you start seeing all those connections, it's hard to not look at it. So I think it's it'd be interesting to see where the truth leads us and what comes out of it.
And in Sweden, they even changed. The biggest arena we have, or at least the most famous, it's called Ericsson Globe. It's like a big venue. And this week they changed the name, or the last week, to Avicii Arena, after the Swedish pop artist that was exposing the pedophiles in his videos and stuff like this. So it's a lot of very, very interesting things that's going on in Sweden. How, in the States, how aware are people today? What's coming next?
Yeah, I mean, it really varies. The United States is such a big country. It varies from space to space. I'd say the more urban areas are still pretty inundated. The more dense a city population, typically the more dense the programming is. And because cities are such an unnatural space for us to be in general, the only people that want to live there are the ones that are that deep within the programming. So it's slower progress within cities, but it varies from region to region. There's a lot of different, but it's you see the progression. You see where people are slowly coming around to this idea and starting to question. And I've had a couple friends reach out to me recently that have started to question things, and like, is that really Joe Biden up there? And what's going on? This is so ridiculous. And it's like, yeah, it is ridiculous, because it's all supposed to be ridiculous. Um, and so, yeah, people are coming around, and just from, because I've done a fair amount of traveling in the U.S. in like 2020, just just real quickly, I spent as a sort of nomad the whole time. I was just driving around the U.S. and camping in a lot of beautiful places. So I had a really good chance to see the country, and really, and since this was 2020, it was fascinating to watch from that lens of the COVID perspective. And really, rural anywhere, they never really cared too much about COVID. It never really was something that they worried about or did too much about. It kind of varied from region to region, but not that much. And so I think it's just a prime example of people who are more in touch with the earth, which is our mother. The more in touch we are with our mother who birthed us or born us, is the less susceptible we are to society's lies. And so you see people who are just a lot more grounded in that sort of space. And I imagine that's a similar sense most everywhere in the world. The more in touch you are with nature and the earth around you, the less susceptible you are to society and the lies that can be pushed that way.
Yeah, before we start to wrap this up, I want to be a little more on the lighter side here of things. I want to show you a picture, and you
Okay.
have to rate my health, so to speak. I just show you my dinner from today.
Okay.
And if 1 is like McDonald's and 10 is like I don't know, fruits and frugivore stuff, you have to tell me where I am, because this is my journey that I started, I don't know, like 5 months ago. I'm heading there. I'm not there yet, but I haven't had any alcohol fun during
Beautiful.
this year. What more? Yeah, running every second day and stuff like this, but just for the fun of it. So this is my lunch today, or my dinner. It's tomato, pineapple, cucumber, and then it's actually halloumi cheese, because I tried to also stay away from meat.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are completely straight up with me, how far am I on this journey?
Can you open the picture? I'm just seeing a thumbnail right now.
Oh, you don't see it, or?
No,
Okay, wait, I'll stop sharing and try it again.
I just showed the folder with the thumbnail. There it is. Okay, great. Yeah, so I mean, really, if we can get to, I'd say a major step is whole foods. If we can get away from packaged anything, if it has an ingredient list, to not eat it. And that's a huge step for anyone stepping into this path, because it doesn't matter where you are and what you're eating. If you can transition away from anything with ingredients, you're going to be miles better. You're going to improve drastically, because that's all we're doing is just toxifying our bodies. And the less toxins that we can accumulate, the more that we can step into this health. And I would say, it's great as far as having the fruits and veggies in there. Um, the cheese is gonna hold you back. Like, cheese is it's concentrated cow's milk or whatever animal milk, and so it's taking this already unnatural substance that our body has no idea what to do with. Like, we can't consume dairy. It creates all sorts of problems with our bodies. But then they concentrate it into this cheese form, which is highly addictive, and it just compounds this issue that our body has absolutely no idea what to do with it. And so the more things that we consume, like cheese and meat and these things that our body really can't process very well, it creates this state of acidosis, which um, it just drives more issues into our system, and creates this sort of disconnect between us and simplicity and ease, which um, that's alkalinity, is simplicity and ease. So the closer we are to the highest form of fuel, which is glucose, which is the sugar found in fruits, um, that's the state of most ease. And so every step you get away from that, the more dis-ease you start to introduce. So and it's not to say anything to like we shouldn't be hard on ourselves at all with where we are. We should honor where we are in the journey and where we come from. But that would just be my take there is
Yeah,
if you,
it, to me, it's just a gateway away from meat, and I hope I get rid of this as well soon.
yeah, yeah, it's a good thing to step away from. It's yeah, but it really just depends. Like everything in this physical experience is all about what you want. If we want to experience eating those sorts of things, then we'll experience the repercussions of eating them, and we'll be diseased, and that's kind of where we're at right now, and it's just about how high do you want to go.
Yeah, you have your own little fan club here in Sweden, because we a couple of friends that see your shows, and now we start to like cleansing our water, and like the tap water and stuff like this,
Beautiful.
and we will start to do our own colloidal silver, and like try to be as what do you say, self-efficient,
Self-sufficient.
sufficient, yeah,
Yeah.
as possible. So I'm still a newbie on this, but I will
We
continue my path.
Yeah, I mean, we all are. Like we've been lied to our whole lives. We've been pushed these poisons our whole lives. So it's important to not beat ourselves up and to remember that, there's no judgment because we've come any step towards the truth is a step in the right direction. So we just need to keep waking up each day and recognizing that, if I do one thing better each day, I'm moving in that direction and I'll eventually get there, and just to enjoy the process along the way too.
Yeah. Yeah, Justin, this was fantastic. So interesting. So many interesting topics, and the psychological view of everything also is very interesting. Do you think that the world will be just we sum up this? But do you think that the world will be a completely different world in 5 years?
Yes. I mean,
Yeah,
it's 1 year, it's been a
yeah,
completely different
yeah,
world, so
yeah.
5 years time, it's hard to imagine because this is only accelerating. This transition is only accelerating.
I'm more concerned about like we said about the voting. How can people like comprehend with the fact that we never been ever lived in a democratic society?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's all moving away from this idea that we have to be spoon-fed by authority, and then taking ownership of this experience and saying, you know what, I'm going to take responsibility not only of myself, which is it has to be started there. We have to take responsibility for ourselves, for our health, and for how we treat other people, and our ego, and our reactions, and all those sorts of things. But then when you've done that, then you start to move into this bigger sense of responsibility and taking care of the larger aspects of how my community interacts with the world around me, and things of that nature. So it's stepping back into that space of responsibility, which means that we can't be reliant on external factors in order to do it for us, which will take some adjustment. And like I said, it's all based on free will. So the time it takes for us to move through this transition is completely up to us. It's completely up to us, and it could be as pain-free or as painful as we want it to be. But it is going to change. There's no stopping what's happening. This is much bigger than just our desires to keep it the same. This is a natural cycle that has to go on, and it will continue on. So we can either enjoy the ride or fight it the whole way, and so we'll see how that works. But I know that I'm enjoying the ride, and I'm going to keep enjoying it and spreading that light, because the more of us that can do that, the easier it gets to be for everyone else.
Normally, I ask what's your nearest plans for the future, but do you even plan, or do you just go with the flow now?
I love that you recognize that, because it is something that it bothers some family members when they ask me, hey, what's your like 5-year, 10-year plan down the road? And I say, well, you know what? If I wake up tomorrow, I think I'll figure it out then. Because we should really take each day as it comes, and I shouldn't even really be worrying about tomorrow. Like, I should be present for today, because presence is the only space where we truly operate, and where consciousness exists, where God exists. everything else is an illusion, you know, future plans and focusing on the past and all that other kind of stuff. So I don't, you know, but I do have trajectories, and I do have like goals and ideas and things that I'd like to do. So just to list a few, you know, like I'm here in Mexico, and I do want to keep exploring, um, you know, starting a community here and really expanding on what we can do with this beautiful space, and tapping into this Mother Earth and growing all the fruits, and becoming so self-sufficient with this earth around that I never have to, regardless of what happens with organized society. And I do have a lot of faith and hope that organized society will head the same direction. But I want to be a leader in that. I want to be someone who paves that path and says, this is what's possible. And so creating a community where we can have that, and step into our highest good, to always be doing the work and addressing our ego, and also living in communion with the Mother Earth around us. Um, that's my goal, my trajectory. So that looks like, you know, acquiring land in Mexico and building a home, and just starting that space to where others can come join us, who are also in that same mindset and want to be leaders within that. So that's kind of the next little look at, but I don't have a lot of details, and I'm just going to take it day by day.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, just want to thank you for all the knowledge and everything that you, all the work you do in like week after week, and I really admire your work and
Thank you,
everything.
brother.
And just want to say thank you for me and all my friends that watch your show, and we discuss things that you bring up, and then we discuss it further, or you know, like even start to develop our own, you know, water system and stuff like this. It's
Beautiful.
like
Thank you, brother.
very inspiring.
That means a lot. That means so much to hear. I really appreciate that. And it's been truly an honor to be here, and I'm more than happy to come back and speak anytime.
That sounds fantastic. And you're very welcome to Sweden.
Thank you.
Sometime in
I
the future
appreciate
as well.
that. Yeah, I mean, once we unlock this technology and we've got these magnetic levitation devices that we can fly around in, I will certainly be exploring this world very thoroughly.
Fantastic. Okay, Justin. Then I say thank you for this time, and see you next time then.
Yep. Thank you, brother. Take care.
Take care.